Shalom, shalom. This is Rabbi Moshe Otero with Ways of Israel. I want to thank Hashem in particular for this morning for delivering my son from Israel. I say delivering because it is the land of all the Jewish people by inheritance, by promise of the divine in His Word, in His Torah, and His Scriptures. Do not belong to a people that are full of violence. As a matter of fact, the portion of this week in Parsha Noah speaks specifically why God had to destroy humanity, which had to do with Hamas. As a matter of fact, the word Hamas in Hebrew means violence. The world was filled with violence, and thus we read in the Parsha of Noah how God had to bring about the Malbul, the flood, in order to destroy the violent one that basically were raping and killing and doing all types of evil one with another. No doubt in my mind that what we've been seeing in the Gaza is complete a people of violence. Remember those scenes? I remember when we had our TV show, we basically broadcast that. That was before all of these new narratives coming into play. But we put actual pictures of how these children are taught in schools to hate Jews, to kill Israelis, to put on bomb sacks or backpack of bombs to go and blow up the Israelis. And they would pay them, the families of the survivors of these children who would go out and for the sake of Yachid and the sake of the martyrdom to pay them. Have we forgotten that? I haven't. That was like yesterday. I remember that when we were in a TV show where I had a Muslim sheikh sitting next to me and asking these questions, as the more the conversation was developing, I had to move away from him because the expressions of his theology in his form of radical Islam did not give room neither to Jews nor to Christians in existence. We ended up sending way apart. And when the producers asked me to translate for him, since he didn't speak Spanish, I said, I can't do that. What this man is saying is complete evil, and I can't associate myself with such thoughts. That happened, my friend. Well, we read in this chapter of Ramban, and again, I'm doing this for my sons, Mayor David, who Baruch Hashem is arriving today in Atlanta, Georgia. Baruch Hashem and his wife Kim. And I'm doing this also for my son Joshua and my other son David Joseph. Kol hachoem kol minei Gehinnom shultin bo. Whoever flares up in anger is subject to the discipline of Gehinnom. Rabbeinu Nissim, in his commentary in the Darim 22a, interprets this statement as a promise of retribution to persons who surrenders to rage. Anger is dangerous not only in and of itself, but also because of what it leads to. It leads to loosening the bridle of self-control, which can often be the first step towards abandoning restraint altogether. As each successive bond is severed, ultimately the bond of belief in God will fall as well. Open and unfettered, the angry man is powerless to avoid sin, and it lays himself open to devastating consequences. Harav Yerucham Levovitz understands that though through anger, the pain of Gehinnom becomes a real even in this world, and he infers this from the King David's word that says, Hashem ha'elota min she'ol nafshi. Hashem, you have raised up my soul from the lower worlds. Psalms 30 verse 4, which were written while David was yet alive, the burning emotions of anger, depression, and frustrations are their own emotional hell. This is Da'at Chachma Umusar, Volume 3, page 20. And this is so true. Person that shows anger and has hate angry because of frustration of because what someone has done to them. And they feel they have to cause vengeance. Is a very unhealthy feeling. The Beis Avraham observes that the greatest danger of hostile disposition is that it prevents others from offering constructive criticism. A person's peer will not point out his own failures or faults if they fear a tirade in response, without criticism to aid him. The easily angered person is more liable to fail in developing other aspects of his character as well. As we saw in the previous video, it is a character flaw that needs to be attended to and corrected. The Sefer Haredim in Teshuvah 4 writes that the delicate soul, a celestial fragment of the Almighty, cannot tolerate anger. When a man succumbs to uncontrollable rage, his soul, in a sense, departs, leaving behind a deathly vacuum. One who surrenders to anger thus commits a form of spiritual suicide. He further writes, if one lost a beautiful flower, it would be madness for him to react by breaking the precious object, worth thousands of times more than the smaller flower or small flowers. Similarly, a person who loses his temper shatters his peace of mind, a commodity far more precious than that relatively trivial loss which triggered his wrath. Rabbi Israel Salanter, the founder of the Musar movement, was especially aware of anger as a spiritual poison. Once, while he was living in Berlin, a visitor found Rav Israel uncharacteristically upset. The visitor inquired as to the source of his trouble, and Rav Israel answered that 2 Jews from Kovno had just come to visit and reported to him on potentially troublesome changes that were about to be made in the local Bet Midrash where Rav Israel used to study. Are the changes that bad? Asked the visitor. No, answered Rav Israel, but nevertheless, I felt some anger when I was told of them. Did you speak to the guest in a way that could have contained the element of insult? God forbid, answered Rav Israel. No one but myself knew of it. And certainly you know, however, that when a person gets angry, it is as if he were worshipping idols. And this is subject to divine retribution. Bittersweet gifts. This is why anger is such a very dangerous thing. The philosopher once commented that most men endure lives of quiet frustration. Unfortunately, many people who display outward composure are consumed by inner turmoil. Their hearts overflow with bitter disappointment with each new experience of life setback, and they become more deeply angered. The Talmud says in Arachim 16b, it suggests an antidote to these feelings. No man is free of sin. Although God has no mercy on those who are thoroughly evil, as we're seeing now in the Middle East, he acts with compassion towards the bulk of mankind. Instead, the overwhelming transgressors, with devastating blows, God allows them to experience the consequence of sin gradually over time. Talmud cites numerous examples of minor discomfort which may serve as a divine retribution. They include commissioning a tailor to sew a suit and disliking it, asking for a hot drink being served a cold one, and reaching into one's pocket to take out 3 coins but coming up with 2. The Talmud concludes, if a person goes through 40 days without experiencing any pain or slight discomfort, he should be concerned, lest he receives all of his reward and pleasure in this world and suffering awaits him in the future. Even these apparently trivial discomforts are meaningful. They are indeed God's bittersweet gift. The Midrash in Bamidbar Rabbah suggests that one develop a positive attitude towards the losses which occurs in the course of a normal life. Always be willing to forgive the mishap which occurs in the home. When someone breaks a bottle of expensive wine, if you react with compassion, God himself will repay your loss. And let me say this to many parents who basically their homes are broken. The children usually go through a process of frustration for the loss of one or the other parent that's no longer in the home where the child feels secure. And out of frustration gets angry and wants to kill and wants to harm the other parent that's no longer in the home. And because of this, so many homes today, even Jewish homes, you'll find this issue of anger taking grip in the heart of many children who are left as they feel abandoned. This is why the words of King David become so important. Although your father and your mother forsake you, then I, the Lord your God, shall take you up. Psalms 27:10. Remember that in your heart and your mind, and be strengthened to know that you are never abandoned. You are never forsaken by God. You're never forsaken really by a parent who truly loves you. This is Rabbi Moshe Otero with the Ways of Israel. And remember, Hazak, Hazak, strength in your faith with God. Shalom.